Welcome back to Decoding Philosophy, where we break down classic texts. Today, we're diving back into Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
And we're in a really dramatic section, aren't we? It's titled The Magician. What's the setup for this chapter?
So Zarathustra is walking alone, as he often is, and as he comes around a rock, he sees a man just ahead on the path.
And this man is acting strangely, I take it?
Extremely. The text says he threw his limbs about like a maniac before finally collapsing onto the ground.
Wow. So a very violent, uncontrolled display. What does Zarathustra think is happening?
He hears a dreadful cry of distress, and his immediate thought is that this must be one of the higher men he's been seeking, and he needs help.
His first instinct is compassion then. He wants to help this person in apparent agony.
Exactly. He rushes over to where the man is lying on the ground. But when he gets there, he finds a trembling old man with fixed, vacant eyes.
Is he injured?
It's not clear. Zarathustra tries to lift him up to get him back on his feet, but it's no use. The man is completely limp.
And is he aware that Zarathustra is there trying to help him?
Not at all. The text says he did not seem to notice that someone was beside him. He just keeps looking around as if he's totally alone and forsaken.
That's an incredibly bleak image. Just this isolated, trembling old man.
It is. And then, after a lot of convulsing and curling up, he begins to speak. Or rather, to lament in this very poetic, dramatic way.
A lament? What is he saying?
He starts by crying out for warmth and love. He says, "Who warmeth me? Who loveth me still? Give ardent fingers. Give heartening charcoal warmers."
So he feels cold and unloved. It sounds like a deep existential coldness.
Absolutely. He describes himself as half dead and cold, shivering with icy cold frost arrows. But then it gets stranger. He says he's being pursued.
Pursued? By who?
He calls his pursuer, "Thou huntsman hind the cloud banks," and later, an unfamiliar god.
So he feels he's being hunted by a mysterious unknown god. That's terrifying.
And he feels he's been lightning-struck by this god, who watches him from the darkness with a mocking eye.
A mocking eye? So this isn't a righteous, punishing god. It sounds cruel, almost playful in its torment.
That's exactly the tone. He accuses this god of not wanting to murder him, but to torture him for sport. For why me torture, thou mischief-loving, unfamiliar god?
It's a very personal and paranoid kind of suffering. He feels specifically targeted.
Yes, and the paranoia intensifies. He feels this god sneaking up on him in the middle of the night, getting far too closely.
He can feel its presence physically?
He says, "Thou hearest me breathing, thou overhearest my heart." He feels completely exposed, mentally and spiritually.
And he calls this god a thief, trying to climb a ladder into his heart, into his secretist conceptions. It's an image of total violation.
It is. He feels this god is a torturer, a hangman god. He's utterly powerless.
So what does he do? Does he just submit to the torture?
He offers to debase himself, to roll on the ground and wag his tail like a dog. But then his pride kicks in.
Ah, so there's a shift.
A major one. He says, "In vain, oh no dog, thy game just am I, cruelest huntsman, thy proudest of captives."
So even in his torment, he's asserting some kind of dignity. He's a proud captive, not a mere animal.
Exactly. And with that pride, he demands answers. He asks what this god wants from him. He even brings up ransom money.
He's trying to negotiate his way out of this divine torture. That's bold.
He is. He says, "Solicit much, that biddeth thy pride." But then comes the terrible realization.
What does he realize?
He realizes the god doesn't want money. He asks, "Me wantest thou? Me? Entire?" The price is his entire being.
That's a chilling thought. To be completely consumed by your tormentor.
And this realization seems to break him. He cries out again for love, for warmth, and then makes one final, desperate plea to his cruelest foe.
What does he ask for?
He says, "Give, yield to me, thyself." He demands the tormentor itself.
Wow. And then what happens? Does the god answer?
No, the presence just vanishes. The magician cries out, "Away, there fled he surely, my final, only comrade, my greatest foe."
He calls his greatest foe his only comrade. He's become attached to his own pain.
It seems so, because he's devastated by its absence. He begs it to return. Oh, come thou back, mine unfamiliar God, my pain, my final bliss.
His pain is his bliss. What a twisted, desperate state of mind. So how is Zarathustra reacting to this whole monologue?
He has reached his breaking point. The text says he could no longer restrain himself.
So what does he do? Does he try to comfort the man?
Quite the opposite. He takes his staff and strikes the man with all his might.
He hits him? After all that apparent suffering? Why?
Because he sees through it. While hitting him, he yells with wrathful laughter, "Stop this, thou stage player, thou false coiner, thou liar from the very heart. I know thee well."
A stage player? So Zarathustra believes the entire display was a performance.
He's completely sure of it. He calls the man an evil magician and says he knows how to make it hot for people like him.
How does the old man react to being physically struck and called out so aggressively?
The change is immediate. He jumps up from the ground and says, "Leave off, strike me no more. I did it only for amusement." He claims so. He says, "That kind of thing belongeth to mine art. Thee thyself I wanted to put to the proof when I gave this performance."
So it was a test for Zarathustra, and the magician even compliments him, saying, "Thou hast well detected me."
Yes, he praises Zarathustra for being hard and says that his truths, like his staff, forced this confession out of him.
It's such a strange interaction. The magician seems almost proud to have been caught.
He is, but Zarathustra isn't impressed by the flattery. He's still angry and calls him a peacock of peacocks, thou sea of vanity.
He's not letting him off the hook, so he pushes for more information?
He does. He demands to know what role the magician was playing. Whom was I meant to believe in when thou wailst in such wise?
And does the magician give him a straight answer?
A very specific one. He says, "The penitent in spirit. It was him I represented."
The penitent in spirit. What does that mean? It sounds like another one of Nietzsche's specialized terms.
It is, and the magician says Zarathustra himself invented the expression. He describes it as the poet or artist who eventually turns his own spirit against himself.
So it's an intellectual who becomes disillusioned by his own knowledge and conscience.
Exactly. The one who freezeth to death by his bad science and conscience. It's a figure of profound intellectual despair.
And the magician chose this specific role to test Zarathustra's perception.
Yes, and he boasts about how successful he was, at least for a while. He says, "Thou believest in my distress when thou heldest my head with both thy hands."
He's gloating that he managed to fool Zarathustra, even for a moment.
He is. He says his wickedness rejoiced in the deception. But Zarathustra's response is very stern.
What does he say?
He says, "I am not on my guard against deceivers. I have to be without precaution. So willeth my lot."
That's a fascinating defense. He's saying his nature, his destiny, is to be open and unguarded, which inherently makes him vulnerable to tricks.
Precisely. And then he turns it back on the magician. "Thou, however, must deceive. So far do I know thee." He sees deception as the magician's fundamental nature.
So it's not just an art form for him, it's who he is. He's fundamentally a false coiner.
Zarathustra believes so. He says even the magician's confession that he did it for amusement isn't fully true or false. It's just another layer of performance.
So he's saying the magician is incapable of being straightforward.
Yes, he says there was also seriousness therein. Thou art something of a penitent in spirit.
Ah, so the performance was rooted in a real truth. The magician chose that role because, on some level, he actually is that person.
That's Zarathustra's deep insight. He tells the magician, "Thou hast become the enchanter of all the world, but for thyself thou hast no lie or artifice left. Thou art disenchanted to thyself."
He can fool everyone else, but he can't fool himself anymore. He's run out of tricks.
And the only truth he has left is disgust. Zarathustra says no word the magician speaks is genuine, but the disgust on his mouth is.
That is a brutal diagnosis. How does the magician respond to being so thoroughly dissected?
For a second, his old arrogance flares up. He shouts, "Who dareth to speak thus unto me, the greatest man now living?"
There's that sea of vanity Zarathustra mentioned.
A flash of it, but it dies just as quickly. He then changes his tone completely and says sadly, "O Zarathustra, I am weary of it. I am not great. Why do I dissemble?"
He finally confesses. A moment of genuine honesty.
Yes, he admits he sought greatness and convinced many people he had it, but the lie became too much for him. He says, "On it do I collapse."
And he adds something crucial, doesn't he? He says that his collapse is genuine.
That's the key. And Zarathustra, looking at him gloomily, actually honors him for this.
Why does he honor him for collapsing?
Because it's the first truly honest thing the magician has done. Zarathustra says, "It honoreth thee that thou soughtest for greatness, but it betrayeth thee also. Thou art not great."
So the honesty in admitting failure is more honorable than the performance of false greatness.
Exactly. Zarathustra says, "In that one moment wast thou genuine." By admitting I am not great, the magician finally touches truth.
So, with this new honesty between them, what happens next?
Zarathustra asks him plainly, "What are you seeking here in my domain? And what kind of test were you really trying to perform on me?"
And after all that, what was the magician's ultimate goal?
The magician pauses, then reveals his true quest. He says he wasn't just testing, he was seeking.
Seeking what?
A genuine one, a right one, a simple one, a great man. And then he looks at Zarathustra and says, "Knowest thou it not, O Zarathustra? I seek Zarathustra."
Whoa. So the whole elaborate, painful performance was a convoluted way to find out if Zarathustra was the great man he was looking for.
Precisely. And this declaration hangs in the air. The text notes a long silence between them as Zarathustra becomes deeply absorbed in thought.
How does he respond to being identified as the potential great man?
He responds with what Nietzsche calls politeness and policy. He doesn't directly accept or deny the title.
He deflects, I'm guessing.
He does. He grasps the magician's hand and points the way up to his cave, telling the magician he can seek for the one he wants to find there.
That's a very cryptic Zarathustra-like answer.
It is. He even tells him to ask his animals, the eagle and the serpent, for help in the search. Then he makes a broader, more critical point.
What's that?
He says, I have as yet seen no great man. He claims that in the current age, what is truly great is invisible to even the sharpest eye.
Why is that? Because of the kingdom of the populace?
Exactly. He argues that the modern world, dominated by the values of the crowd, can't recognize true greatness. It only recognizes inflated pretenders.
He uses that metaphor of the frog that inflates itself, right?
Yes, and he says, to prick a swollen one in the belly, I call good pastime. He's directly referencing what he just did to the magician.
So he sees exposing false greatness as a necessary, even enjoyable task in this day and age.
He does. He concludes that in our today, nobody knows what is great or small anymore. Therefore, only a fool would go looking for a great man.
And he calls the magician a strange fool for trying. He ends by asking, why dost thou tempt me?
Yes, the temptation is for Zarathustra to believe he is the great man the magician seeks, but he resists it, knowing the time isn't right.
So he walks away laughing, comforted in his heart. It's a fascinating end to the encounter.
It truly is. It perfectly illustrates the conflict between genuine being and performance, and the deep challenge of finding authenticity in a world of fakes.
And it reveals that even the most cynical performers, like the magician, are ultimately searching for something real.
That's the tragic irony. His search for the genuine man was conducted through the most disingenuous means possible.
A perfect philosophical paradox to end on. Thanks for walking us through that.
My pleasure. Join us next time as we continue our journey with Zarathustra.